Hi, I'm Hannah, a physical therapist from Denver, Colorado. 5 years ago, I was chasing my dream of building a thriving physical therapy practice in downtown Denver. The clinic was everything I'd hoped for: busy, successful, and full of meaningful connections with my patients. I'll never forget moments like when little Christopher, a 7-year-old recovering from a car accident, took his first steps after months of therapy. "Miss Harper, look, I can do it by myself now." Christopher beamed as he walked across the room, leaving his crutches behind. "That's incredible, Christopher. You're a superhero in the making," I told him, my heart swelling with pride. It was moments like these that made the long hours worth it. Then, one day, Matthew Anderson walked into my clinic. He was tall, with kind eyes and a smile that could brighten any room. A firefighter, he'd injured his shoulder during a rescue. "I have to admit," he said during our first session, "I'm terrible at following recovery instructions." "Well, Mr. Anderson, lucky for you, I'm even more stubborn than my patients," I teased, and we both laughed. From that moment, something clicked. Our love story unfolded naturally, like spring wildflowers in the Rockies. Within a year, we were planning our wedding. Everything felt perfect until Madison, Matthew's mother, entered the picture. At first, Madison seemed warm and welcoming, but during our engagement party at the Cherry Creek Country Club, I overheard her talking to Matthew's Aunt Olivia. "A physical therapist? Really? I always imagined Matthew was someone more accomplished," Madison said with a pointed tone. "Olivia, ever gracious," replied Madison. "She runs a successful practice and helps people heal. What more could you want?" Despite the tension, Matthew and I married in a beautiful ceremony at Red Rocks. A year later, we were blessed with twins, Mia and Ethan. Olivia became my rock, helping me navigate motherhood while balancing my growing practice. But Madison wasn't done testing me. One day, while I was treating Mrs. Johnson, an elderly patient, I got an urgent call from the daycare. Mia had a fever. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm so sorry, but I need to go." "Go, dear," she said kindly. "Your babies need you more than my old bones do." When I arrived, I found Madison already there, holding Mia. I took the liberty of handling the situation, she said, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. After all, a working mother can't always be there. That moment hit me hard. Madison wasn't just questioning me as Matthew's wife. She was challenging my ability to be a mother while pursuing my career. Things escalated from there, like a Colorado wildfire. One morning, while I was helping a veteran adjust to his prosthetic leg, I got several urgent texts. Madison had shown up at Mia and Ethan's school, attempting to change their emergency contact information. "I just figured you're so busy with your little job," she said smugly when I confronted her. "My little job helps people walk again," I replied, keeping my composure. "And I've never missed an emergency call for my children." Later, during a charity event I organized at the clinic to offer free therapy for low-income families, Madison arrived unannounced. The waiting room was full, including Sarah, a single mom saving for her daughter's cerebral palsy treatment. "Really, Hannah? Turning your clinic into a homeless shelter?" Madison sneered. "What will your paying clients think?" Her words stung, but I stood firm. "These are families in need, Madison. Everyone deserves care." That week, 3 regular clients canceled their appointments. Madison had been calling them, suggesting they might catch something from the people I was treating. The final blow came during the twins' 5th birthday party. I planned everything carefully: a superhero theme, games, and decorations. Olivia helped, even creating beautiful memory books filled with photos and stories for each twin. But Madison arrived with extravagant gifts: a massive dollhouse for Mia and an expensive gaming console for Ethan, something I'd explicitly said was too much for his age. "I hope you don't mind," Madison said sweetly. "I know you can't afford such nice things with your charitable work." Her words stung, but what hurt even more was seeing Olivia's thoughtful gifts pushed aside and forgotten. She left the party early, her hurt visible. The next morning, I got an urgent call from Denver Children's Hospital. They needed a physical therapist for a critical case. Jake, a young swimmer paralyzed in a diving accident. Despite everything happening at home, I couldn't say no. Helping Jake reminded me why I loved my profession. His determination was contagious, and during one session, he managed to move his finger slightly for the first time. "You're a miracle worker," his mother said, tears streaming as she hugged me. That evening, I returned home to a sight that stopped me cold. Madison, standing in the living room, surrounded by scattered photos. She'd made a copy of our house key without permission. "These aren't appropriate for the family album," she said casually, holding photos of Olivia and tossing them aside. My heart pounded. "You went through our private things without asking." "And really, Hannah," she continued, ignoring my question. "Working at the hospital now, too. The twins hardly see you. Don't you think you're spreading yourself a little thin?" She wasn't just meddling anymore. She was dismantling my life piece by piece. Watching her deliberately tear apart our family memories, something inside me snapped. "This is my home, Madison," I said, my voice firm. "You crossed a line." Before I could say more, Matthew walked in. His eyes moved from the photos to Madison, and for the first time, I saw recognition dawning on his face. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "what are you doing with those pictures?" For a fleeting second, Madison's polished exterior cracked, and what I saw beneath chilled me to the core. But before anyone could say another word, my phone rang. It was the hospital. Jake had taken a sudden turn for the worse. Grabbing my keys, I left behind the smoldering argument, knowing my patient needed me more than anything right now. The drive to the hospital was a blur. My mind raced with everything Madison had done, but I forced myself to focus. When I arrived, I found Jake gasping for breath, his monitor blaring in distress. "The spasm started suddenly," a nurse explained. "We can't get him stabilized." Years of experience kicked in, recognizing the signs of autonomic dysreflexia, a life-threatening complication in spinal cord injuries. I worked quickly to reposition Jake and adjust his treatment. Slowly, his vitals stabilized. "You saved my boy's life," his mother whispered, hugging me tightly. By the time I returned home, it was late. The house was quiet, the twins asleep upstairs. I found Matthew sitting in the darkened living room, staring into the distance. "I talked to Nancy today," he said quietly. Nancy was his cousin from Seattle. Someone Madison had distanced him from years ago. "She told me some things about Mom's past." Matthew's voice trembled as he recounted what Nancy had shared. Madison had driven away his first stepfather by spreading malicious rumors, then manipulated Matthew's father into severing ties with his family. Each time, she played the victim while systematically isolating everyone around her. "She's doing it again, isn't she?" he asked, his voice breaking. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. She was crying. "Hannah, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking. Olivia had discovered something shocking: emails on Madison's forgotten tablet. They were messages to my clients, canceling appointments under false pretenses. There were emails to the school board questioning my parenting and even letters to Child Protective Services, making baseless claims about Olivia's mental health. The next morning, I arrived at my clinic to find chaos. Reporters crowded the entrance. Madison had contacted the local news, claiming my charity work was putting my regular patients at risk. "Miss Harper," one reporter called out, a microphone thrust toward me, "is it true you're endangering patients by mixing populations?" Just as the reporters pressed in, Jake's mother stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "That woman saved my son's life last night. She's the most dedicated therapist we've ever known." Her words silenced the crowd momentarily, but then others joined in. Sarah, the single mom, spoke with tears in her eyes. "Hannah gave my daughter hope when we had none. She taught her to walk again, something I thought I'd never see." Mr. Rodriguez, the veteran I'd worked with, stepped forward and demonstrated his new walking skills with his prosthetic leg. "Because of Hannah, I can stand tall again." But the biggest surprise came when Mia's teacher arrived, holding an envelope. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, her voice urgent, "you need to see this." Inside was security footage from the twins' school. The video showed Madison trying to pick up Mia and Ethan without authorization, whispering to them that I didn't want them anymore. Matthew watched the video in stunned silence, his face turning pale. "I've been so blind," he whispered. Before we could process it all, we heard sirens wailing. Someone had called in a false emergency at Olivia's house, claiming she was a danger to herself and others. We rushed over, only to find Olivia shaken but unharmed, explaining the situation to the police. Standing there, watching the fallout from Madison's schemes, I realized this wasn't just about family drama anymore. Her actions were escalating and putting lives in danger. But Madison wasn't done yet. She played her final, desperate card, filing for emergency custody of the twins, accusing me of neglecting them because of my work. The courtroom at the Denver Justice Center was packed on the day of the hearing. Jake arrived with his family. Sarah brought her daughter proudly wobbling on her new walker, and dozens of patients and colleagues filled the gallery. "My wife has done nothing but care for our children and this community," Matthew began, but he was interrupted by an unexpected arrival. Nancy, his cousin from Seattle, stepped forward holding a thick folder. "Your Honor," she said, "I have evidence." She laid out Madison's history, years of systematically isolating and destroying families across 3 states. One by one, other victims came forward. Former daughters-in-law, estranged family members, all with eerily similar stories. Then came the financial records. Madison had been quietly siphoning funds from Matthew's trusts, set up by his late father, for years. The judge's expression grew stern as she reviewed the evidence. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, "these are serious allegations." Suddenly, Mia's small voice rang out in the courtroom. "Grandma told us Mommy didn't love us anymore. But that's not true. Mommy helps people walk again. Like she helped me when I fell off my bike." Ethan chimed in, his little voice defiant. "And she reads us stories every night, even when she's tired from helping people." Matthew stood then, his voice breaking. "Your Honor, I've been wrong. My mother needs help. My wife is an incredible mother, a remarkable professional, and the love of my life." The judge's ruling was swift. Madison was ordered to stay away from us, pending a criminal investigation for financial fraud and false reporting. In the months that followed, life began to heal. My clinic expanded, opening a new wing dedicated to low-income patients, funded by community donations. Jake started volunteering, inspiring others with his resilience. And at home, Matthew and I focus on rebuilding, through counseling, honesty, and putting our children's happiness first. So, what would you do if someone tried to destroy your career while pretending to care about your family? Would you stand strong like I did, or would you handle it differently? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your perspective.